everyone. Warm welcome. We are just going to take a minute or two before we start. If anybody would like to let us know in the chat where you're coming in from, it's always nice to get a sense of where we are. You're very welcome to use the chat for that. Our online events, we love a weather report. So I don't know, has anybody got the sunshine today, or yeah, might give us a little update on your weather. Just as a way of saying hello. Hi, Pete. Great to have you back in. Hello. Thank you. Thank you, Dalian. Just outside Saltburn and sunny. Thank you for being first in the chat. That's great.
Pleasure.
Olga, welcome in from Ukraine. Great to have you here. Sunny in London. Alison, great to have you in from Yorkshire. Manchester, thank you, Stacey. Budapest, thank you, Zoltan. Thank you. Hungary, thank you. Chile, great to have you in, Nadia, as well. Oh, we're a real international group here. Very warm welcome. Tamás in from Vienna. A lot of rain in Vienna. Okay, thank you. Yeah, another colleague in from Ukraine as well. Very warm welcome. Yeah. If you're just landing with us, we're taking a minute or so just to kind of arrive and say hello to each other before we get started. Janie, welcome in from Cheltenham. Balin from Surrey. Yeah, great. It's lovely to welcome in colleagues from all over the world to our hour together. Names in from Budapest as well. Good to have you here with us. Okay, well, I think I'll do a little bit of housekeeping just to get us started. So I'm very pleased to be welcoming you to this book launch with the title Anxiety, Freedom and Death, How to Think and Work Existentially. And very pleased to have Zoltan and Tamás here with us for this hour together. So a warm welcome to you both to online events as well. Before we jump into our launch, just a couple of things in terms of housekeeping. We're very pleased to have Jeff here on tech. So thank you for making sure we're all safe and well in the digital environment. If anybody has any tech issues at all, please just let us know in the chat and we'll be right there to look after you too. We're also very excited to be live streaming out onto YouTube and to Facebook and to be live on the socials as well. So if you're watching us live on the socials, a warm welcome to you too. And if you're watching this as a recording in the library or on the socials, we're very pleased to have you here with us as well. In terms, we're also pleased to be recording the event. So, and just a comment about the recording as well. For the most part, we're going to be focused on Zoltan and Tamás for this hour, but we will have some Q&A time as well. You're very welcome to be using the chat for that, but you might also want to open up your microphone and ask a question or make a comment. If you do, you will be included in the live stream and also in the recording as well. And that might be the highlight of your Friday, to be on screen, being recorded and getting on the record. So you're very welcome to do that. And if for any reason that isn't the right thing for you, you're very welcome to use the chat. We're really wanting to make sure that this hour is practical as well, that we can take this into our lives and into our practices. So please, if you've got anything coming up for you during the conversations that we're having, please get it in the chat. Tamás and Zoltan have let me know that it's fine to interrupt them and let them know that there's a question there. So it's great that we've warmed up our typing fingers and we're already getting the chat room going. So please feel free to stay active in the chat as we go through this hour as well. Okay, that's more than enough housekeeping. So I'll do a little bit of introductions. Thank you, Jeff, for getting us on the spotlight. So let's bring Tamás and Zoltan on as well. Here we are. So thank you both for being here for the release of a 2-volume publication, actually, A History of Existential Psychology and the Application of Existential Psychology. We will have the links in the chat too for the Routledge site, and there is a 20% discount on the site too. So just to really encourage everybody to jump over there and get your copies. And we'll also, thank you, Jeff, for getting that in the chat, and we'll make sure everybody's got those links after the event as well. So I'm very pleased to be welcoming Zoltan Kovary, who is in Budapest, is a clinical psychologist and is an associate professor at the university there as well. And to also welcome Tamás Fazekas, who is a psychotherapist and a philosopher, a Daseinian analyst also, and a pediatrician, a medical doctor as well, and working in Vienna. So thank you both for being here for this next hour. I think you're both going to bring different parts of the process and the books. So we'll have some presentation from you both, some back and forward. I'll keep my eye on the chat, and then we'll come together towards the end for the last 10-15 minutes for that Q&A session. So I think that's more than enough for me. Zoltan, I think you're going to get us started, so we'll hand over the spotlight to you, and then we'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you, Tamás, for supporting me, and welcome everyone to this discussion. And I'm very delighted to be here with you, connecting to my book and all the application of existential approach. So these are the books that we are talking about, which has been published a few months ago at Routledge, Taylor and Francis. And first, I would like to tell you a few words about the books before we get to the practical questions. So I wrote this book originally in Hungarian language a few years ago. It was a 1-volume and 800 pages long, huge book, and I wrote it for different purposes. I wrote it because I started to teach existential psychology at the university, and my students didn't have a textbook. So I decided to write them a textbook. But meanwhile, I was also thinking about that it could be a very well supporting book for specialists as well, because in Hungary, there are not too much books like that. And also for everyday people as well who are interested in these deep questions of human existence. What kind of book I intended to write? First, I think that it had to be transdisciplinary, because according to my view, existentialism is always philosophy, psychology, and literature at the same time. No matter when a philosopher is talking about it or a psychologist, they are always using this joint approach when they are talking about it. So the book is containing philosophical, psychological, and also parts, and also some examples from literature. So the second one that I intended to write, not a fully therapeutic book, because there is a lot of therapeutic book about existential psychology, therapy, but there are not too much books about existential psychology as a whole. Also, I meant existential in a much wider sense, in order to put it in the whole paradigm of psychology as a part of human science psychology. It had to be historical and practical at the same time, because I think that human beings are historical beings, and understanding is basically a historical process. And I'm always very interested about the history of ideas and also the history of authors, because my original PhD topic was psychobiography, which means that we are researching the personal roots of creativity, for example, authors who are related to existentialism, just philosophers and psychologists as well. And my finest aim it has to be book that can be read much more easily than the usual existential books, which are always full of very hard philosophical expressions and concepts. Of course, I didn't miss them, so it's not a shallow or a popular book, but somewhere between academic psychology and books like, for example, written by Yalom, which is a much wider audience for. So I think that this book is both for specialists, students, and people who are interested in this field of psychology. So in volume first, which is called A History of Existential Psychology, it contains the very important philosophical roots and the authors, including sometimes their life historical context, how did they influence each other and what kind of life historical events were crucial for them in their lives. Also, there is some part about literature, for example, Dostoevsky or Kafka, and also the very important psychological trends and rules that influenced existential psychology, like psychoanalysis or phenomenological psychiatry. And in the second part of this volume, you can read some thorough and systematic overview of the 4 basic schools of existential psychology, including Daseinsanalysis, Logotherapy and Existential Analysis, Existential-Humanistic, and Existential-Phenomenological psychology. And I also included a special chapter about Hungarian then Swiss psychiatrist called Leopold Szondi, who formed a very interesting trend called fate analysis, which based on the idea of family unconscious. I think it's the very first manifestation of transgenerational thinking in psychology, and I really think that his work is very existential. So that is the content of this first book, and I think that you can read a lot of interesting interrelations between the authors and their personal lives, and also their influences to each other, and so on and so on. And the second volume is about the application of existential psychology. And in the first part of this book, I am discussing all these important existential topics that are always the part of the different authors' work. In some, we can call it the conditio, humana, or human condition. So topics like anxiety, freedom, boundary situations, choices and authenticism, togetherness and love, suffering, meaning, finitude and death, and creativity, which is a very crucial topic for me, not only as a researcher, but also as as doing practice, because I'm very interested in dreams, and I think that dreaming is the outcome of our everyday creativity. So that's how we are transforming our experiences during sleep, and it's very interesting. I really think that we're going to discuss it because Tamás is also an expert of dreaming analysis. And in the second part of the book, I discuss the applications of existential psychology in dreams, which is a main topic, but also in research, because I think that there are some ways to do research and studies in this existential field, which is a bit different than the usual academic research, but it's possible. And of course, a major part is related to counseling and psychotherapy. All of the schools are discussed that how do they approach the questions of counseling and therapy. And in the end of the book, I also take a look at some 21st century developments, because classical existential psychology's main time or heyday was between approximately 1940s and the 1970s, and there is a very welcome renaissance after the millennium due to some important civilizational changes and crises that we experience. And I think that the existential thought can be very useful, not just for therapists and clients and researchers, but also for everyday people to understand themselves and their experiences and the processes they are going through more deeper, and to find a meaning in their lives. And that was also the aim of this book. So I reflect on some actual topics like eco-psychology or gender or the terror management or populism and consumerism. So these are the questions that in classical writings we cannot find. But since these new topics came into view in the modern 21st century world, I think existential approach has a lot to say about these problems as well. So I think that I have finished with this introduction now, and I think that we can go on.
Thank you very much, Zoli.
Yeah. Oh,
John.
Tamás, sorry, Tamás, to interrupt you. Over to you next. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Zoli, for your introduction. And in your very humble way, I want to stress maybe just 2 points that in my opinion, are really novel in your approach, and why I think that your books are so important, even more important than we might think. First, novelty in your approach is that you emphasize on the existential approach as an attitude towards life. This is an attitude which should enhance, openness and freedom for everyone, not just for clients, not just for patients, not just for therapists, but really for the whole society. So you do emphasize our responsibility as counselors or psychotherapists for the given society that we're living in. And yes, and to make it clear, I really do believe that what you are saying in your books is absolutely true. The existential approach is able to deliver more peace in each society. It is definitely able to create more peace in relationships between human beings. But furthermore, I think it's something that we should not underestimate the value of psychotherapy for our societies as such. The second point, which is really unique in your book and that I really do appreciate very much, is that you're trying hard to reconcile all these different branches of the existential approach. In the last decades, there has been significant fights between all these approaches, one pretending to be more efficient than the other, or maybe more philosophical or more important for certain psychopathologies. I do believe that what you are showing here in your books, that this is a unique way of thinking and living, that this is true for each existential school. So I think that this reconciliation of various approaches is of utmost importance if we want to get to your second point, if we want to contribute a little bit to more peace and freedom in our societies. So let me just briefly make some comments on our major topics today here on this online event, which is anxiety, freedom, and death. I think everybody who is working in the existential field knows that these are those topics that we are in our practical work as psychotherapists or counselors have to consider sort of each second. Every time that we talk about some events of our clients or about dreams, we have to think about what is my client afraid of, or what I am as a therapist, what I'm afraid of during the therapeutic relationship or in my private life. We do believe that anxiety is nothing negative as such. Fear per se is something that is meant to wake us up. If we fall asleep, if we forget about our authenticity, about our own, very own individual possibilities in life, then we get afraid. And mostly this vague anxiety is something that is a starting point for reflecting upon our problems, about ourselves, about our relationships. So we do encourage our clients to be happy about their fears. If I hear in a session of a patient, well, I'm so afraid of so many things, it's wonderful. This will lead us to the solution of your problems. So this is maybe a turn in the existential approach that we do emphasize that anxiety is something absolutely positive, not the only thing which is positive. Of course, love and happiness is as important as well, but fear is nothing that we have to delete in our lives. Many clients come to my office with anxiety disorders, and if I'm asking them, well, what's the goal of our therapy? What do you want to reach here in Daseinsanalysis, for example? They tell me, I just want to get rid of all those fears I have in everyday life. And then I keep telling them, well, welcome to my office, but I'm so sorry to tell you that I would rather encourage you to find more anxieties because this will help us to find the underlying problem. The underlying problem is not the fear that you feel in everyday life. And of course, eventually, this will have a positive effect. Eventually, this will remove the symptom of fear. And eventually, of course, you will have a more happy and more peaceful life. So fear is very much linked to death in the existential approach, because we know that we all are going to die at some point in our life. And it's really important and good that we don't know when, because this is calling us to live authentically every second of our life, because we never know when it's over. So every day I wake up in the morning, I ask myself, am I living authentically? Am I living according to my own individual possibilities, including, of course, all my authentic relationships with other people? This is no egocentric approach. This has been a common misunderstanding that the existential approach is egoistic and subjective. No, it isn't, because our relationships belong existentially to us. We're only able to understand ourselves by relationships to other people. And this is true for death as well. We can only realize our responsibility for our life when we know that there is an end. So this is waking us up as all fears that we have. To be honest, I do believe that fears are always a sign of fear of death. So any kind of anxiety shows towards death. And this is good, and this is important, because this shows that we don't have any time to lose. We've got to hurry up. We've got to hurry up to find our own possibilities and to realize which ways of our living are not authentic and are just according to the beliefs or expectations of our environment or our education or our history, whatsoever. And all this, if we realize what our possibilities are, and if we realize how to live them in everyday life, then this will lead us to our everyday freedom. We do believe, and this is something that Zoltán has emphasized in his books several times, that every human being is existentially free. This is a prerequisite of human being. The human condition is per definition a condition of freedom. And this allows us to get healthy again. This allows us to remove our symptoms, to get rid of any psychopathology that we might show. Otherwise, psychotherapy would not be able to help. So we do assume that every human being is existentially free, even if she or he is factically not free, like in a prison or caught in a war, for example. Even in the worst situation in our life, we are free as human beings. And the challenge is, of course, to translate this existential freedom into everyday life freedom, which is definitely not easy, and we know that it's not easy, but we have to believe in it. And this is, as psychotherapists, what we do emphasize in our existential approach. We do tell people, look, you are free, even if it doesn't feel. So even if you have the impression in your everyday life that you're not free at all, I promise you, you're existentially free. And you are able to change your life and to find yourself just the way you are. So maybe one last thing, and which I want to conclude, as a physician, I know that we have a lot of genetics and we have a lot of influence of our past diseases or maybe of education whatsoever. But the existential approach does not believe that the human being is determined by anything in the past. We are not determined by our genes. Well, maybe the color of my hair, maybe this is determined by my genes, but there's not a lot that determines us. And I'm definitely not determined by my culture, by my past. Yes, it has an impact, and yes, it has an influence, but we are free to choose every day of our life to find our authentic way of living. So I think that's why I really want to thank Zoli for publishing these books, because this is something that is supposed to wake us up, every one of us, to wake us up and to rethink again our authentic possibilities of life. So Zoli, cheers for that. You did a great job.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tamás. Okay, as you mentioned in the book, I deal a lot with these very basic existential topics that can be found in the title of this program, Anxiety, Freedom, and Death. In our society, we all share the common belief that anxiety is a kind of a disorder or an illness that we have to get rid of as soon as it's possible. But as existential thinkers, philosophers, writers, and therapists or psychologists emphasize that anxiety most of the time appears when we experience the chance to be free. But to be free is a very hard task because it always goes together with responsibility. And responsibility is even more harder than to be free because it is all about your life, all about that what you are going to become. And you have to make choices that seem to be final for your life. So sometimes you have to choose something and cancel everything else. And of course, it goes together with loss. So sometimes freedom seems to be very hard burden for us, and that's why we are feeling anxious. And as Tamás says, that anxiety has got different layers. In our terminology, we are making difference between the ontic level and the ontological level. And when Tamás was talking about these everyday fears, just like, for example, go into the crowd or climb up to some high places, anything else, this is the ontic level of anxiety. But behind this, we can always find the ontological anxieties that are related to the givens of life. And as Paul Tillich says, who was a very important philosopher and theologian in existentialism, and he wrote a beautiful book about anxiety that I cited up called The Courage to Live, that with psychotherapeutic methods we can cure or handle ontic fears, but ontological anxiety cannot be cured because it is the part of the life. And that's what client has to understand, that as they go to get through the different phases of their life, they always going to face the anxiety that goes together with existence, and they have to find something that gives meaning to their lives, and it somehow helps them to cope with these ontological anxieties that are given to life. And What psychotherapy, or existential approach in psychotherapy is about is just to make them realize that behind these everyday ontic anxieties, there is always the ontological level. And when they learn about that, that anxiety is a normal or everyday phenomenon of human existence, and it is their task to create themselves as individual persons who can relate to the world and relate to others, it gives them a much freedom and much chance to actualize the potential they have inside themselves. And as Tamás said, that death is always at the core of our ontological fears, because it is the starting point for everything. If, for example, Schopenhauer says that if there was no death, there would be no philosophy. So all this human thinking about life and existence is coming from the awareness of our finitude. And I can tell you that, for example, my interest towards philosophy, psychology, and existentialism is also related to my own experiences about death. So existentialism is also about the attitude that the therapist is suffering from the same givens of life as the patient. So we are involved the same way as the patient, although actually we are feeling a bit much better or a bit more stable in this condition than the patient is. So I began to show interest towards these topics first when I was a child, because I suffered very deeply from death fear. And in my profession, and I turned toward existential approach when my father died 10 years ago, because formerly I was working within the framework of different death and dynamic psychologies, but not exactly existential. And when my father died 10 years ago, I felt that there is something more that I need. And that's why I started to read a lot about existentialism. And in the end, I summarized everything that I learned in my former 48 years in one book. So when they asked me about that, how much did it take for you to create this book? I said that to get prepared, it was 84 years, 48 years, but to write it, it was 1.5 years. And after more 7 months to translate it into English. So in the book, you can find some very thorough and very systematic overlook or review about how different authors are related to the interrelations of anxiety, freedom, death, but also suffering and meaning creation, and also how the different schools of existential psychology are trying to treat or trying to deal with these questions, and how do they relate to these questions when they are doing a therapy or counseling. And Tamás is a Daseinsanalyst, so he has got this very special perspective. I myself rather call myself an eclectic existential therapist. So when we will have some time to discuss some practical questions like dreams, maybe we can somehow show how would be differently related to this topic, for example, which is, but we both consider it to be the core of the psychotherapy process.
Yeah, fortunately, Zoli, you have fostered, the reconciliation of all these existential approaches. So we, we're not fighting at all, even if we have a little bit different approach in terms of psychotherapy. I just very briefly want to make a note and emphasize once more why it's so important to speak in an easy language, because this has been a problem in the last decades, that the existential approach, you mentioned the ontologic difference, which is a philosophical concept, which is not so easy to convey. And I think what you did with your book is a tremendous work, to make it understandable for basically everyone, not just specialists. And you emphasized at the beginning that you don't necessarily have to be a philosopher to become an existential therapist or to understand the existential approach, even if you're not a therapist. So, in psychotherapy, we never use these technical terms of philosophy or psychology whatsoever. And most efficiently, most easily, we can demonstrate our existential approach by dream analysis. So this is what maybe the renaissance of the existential approaches that you have mentioned. I think that's really important to repeat. There is a renaissance in this attitude towards life. So I would not stress it so much as a therapeutic approach or therapeutic school. It's an attitude towards life to look for more freedom, authenticity, and peace in relationships. So in dream analysis, we have also tried during this renaissance in the 21st century to get away a little bit from beliefs that, in Vienna, Sigmund Freud has established a little bit by his psychoanalytic dream analysis. We do not go for any interpretation. We do not look for any meaning in terms of symbols, neither in dream analysis nor in our therapeutic work. So as a psychotherapist, we do not believe that we are smarter than our client and that we are so smart that we can immediately interpret anything that she or he says. No, as you emphasized, we are, as human beings, equal, of course, all of us. It's just that we have maybe a special training as psychotherapists, more experience, but that's basically it. We're just one step ahead of our client in terms of looking at a phenomena. And this phenomenological approach seems extremely important to me when we talk about dream analysis. Actually, we don't talk about dream analysis anymore. I rather prefer the term reading dreams, because phenomenology is a school of looking, of listening, and of feeling. It's not an analytic like in medical sciences. We don't analyze dreams like urine or blood, So it's definitely, we're looking at dreams, we're listening to the dreams, and we look what we feel like when we hear a dream. So in dream analysis, we are looking for relevant phenomena that are mostly hidden by some conceptions or interpretations of the dreamer herself or himself. And this is probably the biggest challenge in dream analysis, to realize the relevant phenomena and to differentiate them, disentangle them from all the interpretations and manipulations that have already occurred until the moment, from the moment of dreaming until the moment of therapy, until the moment when we hear this dream. So I really want to emphasize that we don't try to interpret, we don't try to manipulate, the dreamer and try to suggest some meaning of a dream. We're just looking for phenomena, because what we do believe is that authentic possibilities in our life, some of them are only visible in dreams. We're not able to discover all our authentic individual possibilities in our waking life, because we are distracted by so many other things, our environment in everyday life. So we are not able to discover them all. So we do need dreams to discover authentic possibilities. So I want to conclude this brief part, because I really want to allow as many questions from the audience as possible. But maybe let's start, Zoli, with some conversation on this topic. You mentioned that dreams might be a possibility for our creative ideas to show up because they are not able to show up in everyday life, because maybe we don't have the time or we are not open towards them. I would like to challenge it a little bit, because I do believe that in dreams, we remain ourselves. We do not change. And I really want to emphasize that my take, when I hear a dream, then I take it as seriously as anything that I hear from waking life. Because we do believe that we do not change in dreams. It's just that we are open towards other things. and maybe a little bit less distracted. So I do think that the creativity that we have in everyday life is the same as in dreaming life. They just become visible if we look at them, and if we listen to them, then we realize what we authentically are. What is your take on that, Zoli?
I really appreciate and acknowledge the approach of Daseinsanalysis to dreams. So I used a lot of ideas of Daseinsanalysis in dream analysis. For example, what you said, that we can see more of our possibilities and our conditions of existence in dreaming, because during dreaming we are not under the influence of prejudices and pressure and preconditions, so we can be more ourselves and more free. And also what you didn't mention, because we do not have time, the so-called existentials that we are seeing in dreams, like space, time, body feelings, togetherness, and so on. So this is very useful. But my main, I use other kind of perspectives, just sometimes Jungian and Freudian as well, because I tend to see dream as a product of creativity, and how the mind or the unconscious and the consciousness is transforming an impression into something else in order to show something for the dreamer. And there is an important parallel between creative activity in arts and dreaming activity. And there was a question about nightmares, as I saw that, and I believe that nightmares are the outcome of unsuccessful dream work. So as Freud says, dream work is not always successful. Dream work is about to keep up the state of dreaming and to cope up with the impressions that are coming up inside us during dreaming. And that's why most of the time I base my ideas on a person who is called Otto Rank, who was also from Austria, and he was a very important forerunner of existential therapy and existential psychology, and he put the idea of creativity in the center of his thought. He says that our main task is to create ourselves as free individuals coming out from our dependency and our symbiotic relationship with others, and this creation of ourselves can be manifested in creative productivity, just like what we do in our work or arts or something, but our everyday creative activity is showing itself mostly in dreams. And most of the time I'm looking for some linguistic aspects as well, how dream work is turning suppressed thoughts into pictures. For example, I had a client who was an actress, but she was not successful, and she was considering doing another kind of job which was very far from the actress world, and she was fearing that if she gives up her dream to be an actress, then she will lose this thing in her life forever. But she didn't want to confess this for herself. She tried to suppress this idea. And one night she had a dream that she had to cross a bridge in Budapest on the Danube, and she had to get from the Pest side to the Buda side. And this bridge was called the Liberty Bridge, which is related to freedom. And when she was walking through the bridge, he saw that the bridge was started to get on fire. So flames came up behind herself on the bridge. And through the associations, we realized that it is his suppressed idea that I'm gonna burn the bridge behind myself and I will lose this chance to make my dreams come through forever. And that's what the dream expressed. And I really think that this approach about creative transformation of inner contents into dream pictures are, for me, it's very useful and very successfully in therapies.
Thank you both. Thank you. Well, we're getting into discussion. I can see we've got a couple of questions in the chat as well. Is it all right to kind of move to those? That works.
Absolutely.
Great.
Sure.
And if anybody feels like putting up their Zoom hand, we could also see if we can open up your microphone too for a question. Well, more of a reflection here, I think. I'm curious to hear either of your take on guilt through the lens of fear or death, or fear of death. Just whatever comes to mind, no specific question. Some free association, I guess.
Yeah, maybe I'll just briefly make a comment from a therapist's perspective. A guilty conscience is something which is sort of a gem, in the course of psychotherapy. If a patient is telling me, I have a guilty conscience, I feel guilt in my life, then I know, wow, now we're exactly at the point where she or he realizes that she or he is not living according to her or his authentic individual possibilities. So guilt is really a very important feeling, because this shows us that we are definitely not living according to our own possibilities, and we have to immediately look for these authentic possibilities. And if not, then we will die. So not really die, but our existence will change into an inauthentic existence. So we will cease to be ourselves, and we'll be someone else. And this is what we don't want to. And this is what causes fear of death.
Yeah, existential approach considers guilt to be ontologic, which means that it goes together with life. It's the part of our life that sooner or later we will experience guilt for a reason or another reason. So guilt is unavoidable, but there are two forms of that. One what was recalled by Tamás, this is the existential guilt, that I am not myself. I miss my chances for living. I give up myself and I don't live an authentic life. And the other one is the neurotic way that we are feeling guilty because we have the urge to freedom, but we cannot actualize it because we want to stay loyal to our family, to the traditions, and to the expectations. And in order not to lose the connection with them and not to fight for our own freedom and perspective, we are staying within the frames of traditional and not commercial, but conventional life. So this is the choice that you have to make in your life, and that was first formalized by Kierkegaard, either or. So you have to choose this way or that way. You will feel anxiety and guilt at both choices, but it makes different whether you choose yourself or you will give up yourself. So you have to go through your anxiety and you have to go through your own guilt, but the final aim is to establish yourself as a person who is individual and free and take responsibility for herself and himself, but at the time also can relate to the world and to the others as well.
Thank you both. Thank you. We're getting some lovely feedback in the chat about your responses. I can see a question there about a post-COVID world. Lots of things have changed in a short period of time. There's a comment about consumerism there. Before we came on live, we were talking about the political situation around the world too. And of course, in the title, we've got this question, how? How do we? And do you both have, well, I'm sure you both do have reflections on how we might be in this new world that's emerging, and how we might be with the people we accompany in our work. Yeah.
Zoli, do you want to begin, or
you can start, and
I believe yeah, that's good. Thanks for John for reminding us, how to think existentially. I think this is if you ask me, is it difficult to be yourself, then I would say no. That's the easiest way. That's what we are able to do best, to be ourselves. From the moment that we're born, we are ourselves. It's just the environment that changes us, that influences us, and makes us feel guilty in neurotic disorders. So if you ask me how to think existentially, then I would answer just forget about everything that might distract you, that may any interpretations of life. Just focus on phenomena, on those things that you see in your life, and that's it, including yourself. Just focus at looking at yourself the way you are, and not the way that you think that others would like you to look like. So I think this is not so easy as it seems. I think this is something that you have to train. I think this is something that you have got to get used to, because in our everyday life, we're rather used to immediately analyze and interpret and to draw conclusions. And this is not how to think existentially. That's not to draw conclusions immediately. So I think this is something that you have to learn. And it's difficult to teach, by the way. I think the existential approach is difficult to teach. I cannot tell you, be yourself, that this won't work. So this is something that you have to learn in relationships, in the personal encounter. So my take on the post-COVID era and of all this crisis, political crisis that we have, all this post-COVID era does not determine us. Yes, it has some influence on our everyday life, but it does not reduce our existential freedom at all. So this is, I think, some unique in this existential approach, that all these givens that are given to us as human beings have always been true in the past, from the beginning of humanity, and will be always true in the future, regardless of whatever will happen politically or with natural catastrophes or health catastrophes or pandemics. So yes, the pandemic has made underlying problems worse. So those relationships that have already been unstable have become, of course, even more unstable, and there have been a lot of catastrophes in relationships, and especially with adolescents. That's my job, with eating disorders and a lot of psychiatric disorders that have emerged from the pandemic, but not in terms of causality. It was not the pandemic per se that caused the eating disorders. It was this ontologic problem that people were not living according to their possibilities. And then, there was one more hit, which was too much, which was the pandemic, and has eventually led to some psychiatric symptoms. So this is my take on the pandemic, and it's so important, especially in difficult times, to encourage people that yes, we are still free human beings, and we have all the possibilities to make our life better and more peaceful.
What came to my mind in listening to Tamás, that, for example, Viktor Frankl said that there are two ways for us to be free. One is to distract from things that we are not, self-disclosure, to realize that we are under the influence of consumerism and populism, and with self-awareness we can make a difference that what we are really and what we are not really. This he called self-disclosure. And the other one is self-transcendence, which means that we are finding things that we can attach to and help us to realize or to wake up about things. And I think that psychotherapy is one possible thing to do that, but it's not only psychotherapy. So these aims can be reached via other ways, and that's why I wrote this book, which is not fully about psychotherapy, but by other ways. So I think that books, films, music, nature, the dialogues with other people, these all have this kind of effects that help us to realize about our authentic positions. For example, Franz Kafka said that a good book has to be an axe against the frozen sea inside us. So I think that everyone can recall some reading experiences that changed his or her life, or films that changed his or her life. And I really think that existential attitude can be reached with these tools as well. So you do not have to read Being and Time by Heidegger and other books in order to be existential, but as Tamás said, to be yourself and to start to look on the world with a fresh eye without these early interpretations and prejudices and so on and so on. And it helps you to get closer to yourself, to the world, and to others.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for this important remark, Zoli, because this leads me to the other question that I read in the chat. I absolutely agree. You do not need any psychotherapy to live authentically. I absolutely agree. And there are arts and literature and friends and you know, like normal relationships that can help us to be authentic. In my opinion, looking at children is the best way to understand what authenticity means. So the answer to the question in the chat, yes, of course, children do live according to their authentic possibilities, maybe even a little bit more than us adults, because they are not so much influenced yet by their experiences, by education, by whatever influence of the environment. So I really do believe that we as adults can learn more from children in terms of existential possibilities than the other way around.
Oh, thank you for those responses. I've got my eye on the time as well, because we've just got about a minute left. I want to squeeze in one tiny last question. Before I do that, let's put the link to the Routledge site back in the chat so everybody's got access to that. There is a 20% discount automatically applied at the checkouts. So that will be a great thing to be doing this weekend, I guess, to be engaging with the reading. But I want, like, if there's one thing you would encourage us to do, maybe, so over the weekend, we could kind of move into that freedom or reset that freedom. What might you encourage us to do as we go off Zoom, we have our weekend? Is there one thing we might take away and do? You mentioned encounter, you mentioned literature. Yeah, any thoughts before we finish?
Maybe in terms of a practical approach, I would recommend, John, to ask yourself tomorrow morning, drinking a nice cup of tea, what is the most important need that I have? What is what I need most in my life? And then at the second cup of tea, ask yourself the second question, am I able to deliver this need to my fellow human beings? And if you realize both, then I promise you, you're 100% free.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Zoltán, you also, when you're drinking this cup of tea, you also have to listen to good music, because I think that music is one of the best way to connect to our inner feelings, that it will make us free. I'm a musician as well, so it is my experience since my childhood that music is a very well and authentic way to get in touch with ourselves, and also if we listen to music with others, to get in touch with other souls as well.
Thank you both. So they're two wonderful suggestions for us to bring into the weekend. Thank you. I want to say thank you to you both for being here for this hour, for doing one of the book launches with us here at Online Events. It's been such a rich conversation. Thank you both. I want to say thank you to Jeff, who's been taking care of all of our technology also. And to everybody who's joined us for this hour, thank you for being present, whether you've been live, you've been watching the recording. It's been great to have you here. The last thing we usually do is open up the microphones. If anybody would like to say goodbye on the way out, you'd be very welcome to, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
everyone.
Tamás. Thank you, Zoltán.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Much
Thank
appreciated.
you
Very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Zoli.
See ya, Tamás. See ya. Goodbye, John. I have